Thousands of anti-government demonstrators have again gathered in the Armenian capital Yerevan after a dramatic breakdown in live televised talks between the opposition leader and the country's prime minister. As they met, the opposition's Nikol Pashinyan said he was only there to discuss Prime Minister Sarkisyan's resignation. Mr. Sarkisyan immediately walked out. Armenia is located in the Caucasus region between Europe, Russia and Asia. Mr. Sarkisyan has been president there for 10 years and protesters say he's badly mishandled the economy. There is flash photography from the beginning of this report by Harry Darkins.
This was the moment Armenia's Prime Minister met with the man calling for him to step down. A tense encounter between Prime Minister and former President Serge Sarkisyan and opposition leader Nikol Pashinyan. Mr. Pashinyan telling the Prime Minister that he'd only come to discuss his resignation.
The situation has changed. You do not have the power you are reported to have. Authority in Armenia has come into the hands of the people.
The meeting didn't last long. After less than 3 minutes, Mr. Sarkisyan walked out, accusing the opposition of blackmail rather than dialogue. Shortly after, reports came that police had detained Mr. Pashinyan. Officers say he isn't under arrest, but was merely forcibly taken from an illegal rally. For nearly 10 days, protesters have been in the streets of the capital Yerevan, rallying against Serge Sarkisyan's long grip on power. He may only have been Prime Minister since last week, but Mr. Sarkisyan was Armenia's president for a decade beforehand.
It is crucial that we believe that if someone comes and is bad for us, we'll have them removed.
I can see that those young people have finally realised that it's time to say no to all kind of injustice and to live decently with dignity in one's own country.
Thanks to changes to Armenia's constitution made in 2015, Serge Sarkisyan has taken most of his powers with him, from the presidency to the premiership. Opposition supporters criticise the 63-year-old over poverty, alleged corruption and links with powerful oligarchs. His supporters say he has provided much-needed national security, where relations with neighbours Turkey and Azerbaijan are often tense. Some protesters are calling for a peaceful revolution, but with rising tensions and hundreds of arrests over the last 2 days alone, there's concern that things could get further out of control. Harry Darkins, BBC News.
Well, I've been talking about the politicians' confrontation with our Europe regional editor, Danny Eberhardt.
What happened, the two leaders, Serge Sarkisyan and the leader of the protests, came together in a hotel in Yerevan, the capital. It was all in front of television cameras, so it was a rather bizarre thing. It didn't seem like a proper attempt to actually negotiate a solution. There was a quick interchange that lasted for less than 3 minutes, and the two people obviously looked very different. The Prime Minister who's wearing a shirt and tie and shoes, and the opposition leader in his baseball cap and camouflage T-shirt.
You see him just sitting down there, don't we?
The opposition leader basically said he wasn't here to discuss anything other than the resignation of the Prime Minister. This is a man who's led Armenia for 10 years. And the Prime Minister said that he hadn't remembered the events of March the 1st, which was a rather ominous warning, referring back to protests that when he took over in power in 2008, in which a number of people were killed
and then
by the police
forces.
Out. And then he walked out. So it was incredibly unproductive. It seemed very much staged as a show of negotiations rather than a real attempt to solve the issues.
Tell us more about why there's such anger, frustration with Armenia's current leader. I mean, it's a bit like Vladimir Putin, isn't it? You kind of move from one role to another as you stay in charge.
That's exactly the parallel. In 2008, Vladimir Putin did that, stepping away from the presidency into the prime ministerial role for one term before going back to the presidency. And that's what the Armenians fear may happen here. Serge Sarkisyan was a two-term president. When he was coming to the end of these maximum 2 terms, the constitution changed. Now, this was a constitutional change that he did have public approval for.
He held
a referendum in 2015, so he won that. But at the time, he was saying, I don't want to stand again. The situation obviously changed. He put in a president who is now only a ceremonial role, and then a week later walks into the position that has real executive power.
Well, while we've been on air, our correspondent Reyhan Dimitri in Yerevan sent us this from a protest.
Young people are carrying the flag. Look at the flag. This is the Armenian flag being carried by young protesters, and it's really long. It stretches to several meters. And this is, they're chanting Nikol. They're chanting the name of the leader of the protest movement, Nikol Pashinyan, who was detained earlier on Sunday by the authorities here in Yerevan. Other leaders and organizers of this mass anti-government protests have also been detained. And right now, this protest appears to be without a leader. But despite that, thousands of people are in the square, and they still demand the resignation of Armenia's Prime Minister Serge Sarkisyan.
Reyhan Dimitri there, and we'll keep you up to date on that story. A brief look now at some of the other stories making the news today. 4 Britons were killed and 12 others injured in a